Well, good morning. This is Bobbyjon Bauman from the Ask Bobbyjon Show. I have a special guest here this morning I'm really excited to interview, and that's Trey Freeman. And he's a young man that I've known for a number of years, solid young man of God who loves the Lord. And I've had adults that I've interviewed on all the previous shows, unless I've spoken just myself about a particular topic. But I thought we'd hear a voice from the younger generation today and hear from their perspective. And Trey is somebody who I trust and who's an honest young man and also is a solid Christian. So I think he has a good Christian world and life view that he's coming from. And also he'll be able to share with the parents who are listening in and grandparents and adults a little bit of the teen perspective as well as post-high school perspective that individuals have today and how we can best minister to them. Also wanted to mention that this Thursday we're having a concert at Crossroads Church. Julie Elias, who was on CSI New York as well as Grey's Anatomy, is going to be singing there at 6:30 p.m. It's a free concert and everyone's welcome to come. It's sponsored by the Ohio Valley Youth Network, which is a 501c3 organization that is here in Steubenville that I started in. Things are going great guns. We also, the Sycamore Center is, we have the heat on finally. The boiler was fixed, and we're having youth groups that are coming in to help out with painting, fixing things up. So if you're interested in having your youth group come, call or text me at area code 608-556-3068 or contact me on Facebook. And I would love to have your youth group come out and help, and or adult group as well. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the topic today, and that is the spiritual life of teens and post-high school teenagers today. And Trey, just let me ask you, I guess, as a kickoff question, share with me your spiritual journey.
So I basically just grew up as a Christian. I kind of grew up in the church, so to speak. My father was well, I'd say by the time I was born, he had already graduated from Bible college. So he had already been he already had the intent of being a minister. He had already felt that calling on his life, and so I like to say that I was blessed growing up in that kind of environment. But just to kind of, but a misnomer is that people who grow up in the church, no, they're not automatically like followers of Jesus Christ. Because I've learned over the years that it can breed a type of complacency that people who didn't grow up in that environment don't have. Mm-hmm. So it takes just as much of a choice for those who grew up in the church than those who didn't. And so gladly I made the decision for Jesus Christ. I consciously made the decision for Jesus Christ when I was 14. And that's when we moved to Columbus, and it just kind of went up from there.
Well, that's great. It sounds like he had a similar journey to like when the Bible it talks about Timothy and Eunice and how he is raised up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And it sounds like the grace of Jesus Christ was at work in your life, and then finally you, became awakened to the grace of God, and he Christ became Lord, not just somebody that you believed in, but actually followed consciously with your heart at age 14. Was it at a particular service or anything, or was there a eureka moment, I guess, a Paul Saul type thing? Or
it was actually, so we were in Columbus. I was living with my father, and he had moved to Columbus, and there was a church that we went to called World Harvest Church. And it was actually at their youth group, and I remember it vividly because the song that they were singing at the youth group, the song that they were singing was "How He Loves," and so anybody who's known me for a while knows that song has a special place in my heart. Well, that's why. It was everything. The sermon that was delivered, the music that was playing, the songs that they were singing, the presence of God that was present. All those things came together. But I remember it vividly. I can't really explain it. I just felt moved. I felt like, this is actually real. Um, I think that was the first time that I saw Jesus for who he was, um, real.
Hmm.
Because I remember up until that point, I just looked at Jesus as a sort of figurehead. I mean, for the lack of a better word, I looked at Jesus as an idol, like as a figure that you would place on a mantle and you would bow down to or whatever. Not, and that's not necessarily, exactly how I looked at him, but for the lack of a better word, that's kind of how he was to me. Like he didn't. It was just religion. It was just, oh yeah, Jesus. We were supposed to live like this guy in this story. Um, it wasn't until then that I, realized the reality of, Jesus was here on this earth. And yes, Jesus is still alive on this earth as well. Or he's ascended to heaven, but Jesus is still very much alive.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And the Lord has just taken off concerning the trajectory of your life, and
Yeah.
you're doing ministry now. And also, who would you say was your greatest source of spiritual support while you were a teenager growing up?
For spiritual support, it would most definitely have to be my dad. Um, all the time, I would ask him questions. He would give me answers, um, or he would talk to me. And I remember this vividly. I had just got my permit, and so we'd like to. I always like going to gas stations and getting drinks or whatever, Dr. Pepper or whatever. I don't know, whatever. And we'd always go on a drink run to Speedway or something when we lived out there, and he would let me drive, or sometimes he would drive, and we would just go. We would talk, and that'd be it. But honestly, he was always there. He was always leading me, guiding me in the spiritual walk.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he's definitely a man of God. I've known him for many years, and you've had a wonderful model of how to live out the Christian life in and
Yeah,
through. Not only his words, I mean, he's an
yeah,
excellent preacher, but also in his actions. He's
yeah.
always has a heart for outreach, and I see that kind of bleeding through you as well. Just that hunger to see other people come to know Christ.
Yeah, I mean, his testimony is really what gave me my faith. And it's because of the faith that I saw in him. Um, just because I was there through that. I was there through some of his, you know, at least from my point, some of his darkest moments. I was there.
Hmm.
You know, Perhaps there was one point where I was the reason for one of his darkest moments. um, but I I walked through that, next to him, um, and just to see his faith strengthened through that, it just it fell off onto me. Like his cup overflowed, and I received the excess.
Well, could you give a brief synopsis just for our listeners of, I mean, I know the story, but
Yeah,
of what your dad went through?
he went through a lot of things, but collectively, he was born, or he was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 2. And I remember he said that he prayed when he was 6 years old that he would be delivered from it. Um, and so having diabetes, it gave rise to other complications. He had cataracts in his eye. He needed surgery, so he became blind for like a year or so.
Hmm.
He was healed of that. Um, but one of the things that ended up happening, which was later in life when we were in Columbus, he was diagnosed with kidney failure, and he was in end stage renal failure. So he was, they were saying that we're not even sure that you're going to make it to Monday to have the surgery. Um, but so like that's generally what happened, and through it all, I've seen him just, he was in pain. And it was just most evidently in pain, and I've never seen him in that state before. Because growing up, your dad's the strong man, and no, he was most definitely strong, but you've never seen your dad in pain like that before.
Hmm.
And but just to see him pull through that, to see his determination to do the work of the Lord, any other person would have just been like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna stay home. I'm not feeling well. I threw well. And I mean, I don't mean to get graphic, but just to kind of give you guys, this is why I have the faith that I do. He was spewing out blood basically. I mean, that's just how bad it had hit him. And I remember one time we were going there. There's like an urban outreach. There's sort of like a projects outreach that they were a part of for World Harvest Church. It was called Metro Harvest, and I remember they were on their way over there to do something, to do ministry. There was something that we were headed over there for to do, and I remember pulling over at least twice, maybe three times. He had to go up. He was just not feeling good. You could see it on his face. And I remember Kate, my stepmother, asking, "Should we turn around? Should we go back home?" And my dad said, "No, we're going to this." And that, I mean, that showed me, when it's not about you, but when it's about what God has called you to do, and when he gets there, when he's operating under the anointing, you don't see the pain on his face anymore. You don't see any of that because he's doing the work of the Lord. Yeah. And so that really strengthened me. Now, fast forward a couple years from that, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was in 2011, perhaps, or it's vague in my head, but he received a call that they had a kidney and pancreas ready for him for a double transplant. And so not only was he healed of that kidney failure, he was also healed of diabetes that God had promised him he would heal him from when he was 6 years old. So,
that's that's powerful.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to switch gears to just get a few thoughts of yours to assist parents and grandparents concerning youth. What advice would you give to yourself as a 16-year-old student if you were to talk to yourself back then that might be sage advice to spur you on to know Christ better?
I would honestly tell myself to read my Bible more. And because God's word never returns void, and it's what comes from that we have the wisdom that we need. It's what comes from reading the Bible that we have everything that we need. I would tell myself to read my Bible more and to ask the Holy Spirit to guide me along the way. But probably additionally, I would tell myself not to beat yourself up when you make mistakes, because growing up, especially around that time, that's something that I would sin or whatever. A lot of teenage boys struggled with temptation of lust, and so you'd stumble in that area, and you would be disgusted with yourself, and I would and it's okay to be disgusted with sin, but don't be disgusted with yourself, and instead use that to not sin again. Amen. I mean, when that woman was caught in adultery, Jesus didn't say, "What's wrong with you? How could you do that?" He just simply said, "Go and sin no more." And so I would tell myself that, go and sin no more.
That's great. Very good advice. What advice do you have for parents who are raising children in this particular generation that you've learned over the past few years since you've recently navigated the teenage years and a few years of the post-teen era as well for your life?
I would say, if I could give them any advice, I would just say be patient with your sons and daughters. Be patient with them. Pray hard. Trust God. More importantly, trust God. When you deliver them into the hands of God, there is no better place for them to be. And it's trusting God. God put you in their life to be their parent, to guide them, to instruct them. So trust God to as you plant the seeds and as you water them, trust God to supply that increase, but also trust God to give you the words to say. Um, I can't speak from any experience other than from the child's perspective. Yeah, we mess up. It doesn't mean we're not trying. We do have our problems, and we don't always seek to be heard. We seek to be understood. And so
That's
I would
good.
just, I would just keep, I would encourage you to keep that in mind. But also trust, if your child goes to church, trust your youth leaders and pray, pray for them because they'll my youth leaders growing up, they had a good impact on me as well.
Amen. Amen. Well, that's one of the reasons I'm in the business I'm in is
Hey, yeah.
is just it's a very critical time in kids' lives, and I would encourage any parents out there that don't have your kids involved in a particular youth ministry to definitely do that. I talk to people all the time, and they say the first time my faith really was vivified or I came to know the Lord was through a youth ministry that I was involved in, whether a mission trip or
Yeah.
a retreat or just a general youth meeting. And so it's a great opportunity for them. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of it. What are some of the biggest struggles teens and post-teen high school students have today? What do you think, Trey?
I mean, as apparently it is different from individual to individual, but I could say one common thing I've seen is identity. And what I mean by that is, what do they want to do with their lives? Where do they want to go? And I think a lack of identity or a lack of that, a lack of purpose leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. It leads to, you know, even a lack of ambition. And so and I think also, I've noticed a lot of people in this particular generation want to make a difference in people's lives. And so I've seen in the past, 2 years, I would say, I worked at a restaurant called Zelensky's, and at that restaurant, we'd get tons and tons of teenagers who were in college or getting ready to graduate or whatever. And I'd always just to start up conversation, just to be casual. I'd say, "Oh, hey, are you? Oh, so you're in college? What are you majoring?" Or, "Hey, oh, you're about to graduate. Cool. What do you plan on doing?" And more often than not, I'd say about 8 out of 10 people. And this is just from conversation at the restaurant from college students and people who are getting ready to graduate high school. A lot of them are like, "Oh, I want to go into nursing, or I want to go into medical field." So I've seen that. I think people are searching for. I think they're searching for. They have a desire to be needed somewhere, and I think anybody can look at the medical field and see that everybody in the medical field is needed for something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's where they try to find their drive, but in all honesty, they need Jesus Christ and they need their identity in Him and to be called. But they're overwhelmed with choices. They're overwhelmed with we are overwhelmed. Excuse me. We are overwhelmed with fear of failure. Some of them who are truly on their own, they're not really around any family. They just struggle to make ends meet or even find the ends to make them meet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not all struggle out there. Some people are faring well, and so again, they all have their different problems. But I guess all in all, it's an identity problem,
Yeah.
perhaps.
I think you're right on the money with that. Michael W. Smith had a song a number of years ago before you were born, but it's called "Looking for a Reason." Going through the night and trying to find my place in this world was what it was called, and kids are kind of trying to look to find, where do I fit in? What's my identity? What am I significant? Why am I significant if I
Right.
am? And so. Also, what is something many teens don't know or adults don't know about teenagers that you like to share with them that maybe it's kind of in teen culture, but maybe adults don't understand it, I guess.
Okay. I kind of mentioned something like this before, but I would say teenagers Um, it again, it varies, but I would say that our generation, we seek to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
And now, don't get me wrong, there we should, if we are being told something, if we are being instructed on something, yeah, we had better listen for sure. And I'm not arguing against that. Um, but I would say you should adults should try to understand teens, ask them, talk to them. Uh, Literally just ask them what their thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they need to be open to someone who's been there before. Let them be open to you. If you do not understand a teenager, you do not understand the problems that they face internally. And if you don't understand those and address those, then that can manifest into anything, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's it. I would say what I would like for adults to know about teenagers is that they they're capable of thought just as much as we are, as adults are.
Mm-hmm.
Teenagers are capable of thinking and reasoning just as much as adults are. Now, adults are more seasoned, and there might be some sort of scientific developmental stage. I know that your brain isn't fully developed until you're about 25 or so. Excuse me for um, that, but so
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's some certain sciences behind the development of the brain, but that I'll look at my cousin, for example. He's 11 years old, and he's easily misunderstood, and I've noticed that. Um, he's a but when you actually when you take him for a drive, take him to the theaters, and you just listen to him talk, he's brilliant,
Hmm.
and he's he just his intentions and the things that he does could be easily misunderstood, but really, like, this guy is gonna be a renowned historian when he grows up or something, because he has these interests that other kids his age don't have, and but that's the thing with the younger generation. You have to take the time to intently understand them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I tried to do with him. I took the time. I spend the time with him. I hear him when he talks, and I pray that God reveals to me, because he needs to be understood, so that any questions he has can be addressed. Anything that he has internally can be addressed.
I totally agree with that. Just from I think 26 years in youth ministry that um, I've been involved with youth is that they just want to be heard. They want to be loved. They want
Yeah.
somebody to care about them. A lot of times, even whether it's right or wrong,
Uh-huh.
they want to know that they have a voice and that somebody
Exactly.
actually has interest in them,
Right.
and that they matter to somebody.
Yeah, they want people to take the time to understand their heart. That, and
Mm-hmm.
that's that. Honestly, just that alone, taking the time to understand them will mean a lot to them, and they'll probably cling to you in some ways that and it may even surprise you that they'll just take up to you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, well, do you have hope for your generation to turn our culture around for Christ?
Most definitely. Now, yes, most definitely. I think we need to continue to. I think adults just need to continue to, do their best to instruct. I mean, the Bible says, "Train a child in the way that they should go, so that um,
Or old,
when
they
they
will
are
not
older, they
depart
do not
from
depart." Yeah,
it.
exactly. So I would just encourage adults to continue doing that. But for sure, I do trust. I do trust the world in the hands of this newer generation. Um, it's because tradition does not save the world. God saves the world, and God stays the same. But it's our practices that might have to change, and what I mean by that is, you know, the practical things. We don't. I'll put it this way. My cousin has no interest in hymns. That's fine. That's okay. He's not going to hell for that.
Hmm.
That's not what speaks to him.
Yeah.
It would contemporary music would speak to him. And so all of that, and that small example to say, you know, things come and go, fads come and go. I would say no. There is still definitely there's still a need for hymns in churches today. You know, there are various churches where that just speaks to them. Plus, if you read the words of hymns, you know, there's definitely a spiritual significance to that. And I'm not just talking about hymns in contemporary music. That's not really the subject here. What I mean is, you know, there is a new vision, and there's a new means of reaching people that is present. Social media is a strong example. This radio show is an example. YouTube is an example. Facebook is an example. This younger generation will be able to use that means to reach the entire world with the gospel. I know of a there's an organization called World Help, and you know, one of their goals and tasks is to get Bibles into places where it's illegal. And so one of the things that they do is they have a bunch of different translations of the Bible on a little thumb drive, a little flash drive. And they just take that, they give it to people. They'll put it on a laptop, they'll download it. They'll download it onto their laptop, so now they have it with them. And then they pass that thumb drive on to other people, and so the word of God spreads that way. If it were a physical copy of the Bible, that's easily identifiable. That's hard to hide, especially when it's illegal. And of course, you know, it can get, you know, and if it is hard to hide, easily identifiable, it'll get burned, and you know, when you burn those pages, it's lost forever. But when you download that onto the laptops, now that data is on every laptop that it's been in.
Oh,
So that's just an example of, you know, we're moving forward in technology, so, you know, let's use that for the glory of God. And I think this new generation is very capable of doing that, and they're headed in that direction.
Yeah, I honestly think there's been statistics for years about how many unreached people groups are out there in the world.
Yeah.
And that's been dropping since 1980. I think there are over 30,000, and now it's like, I don't know, about 4,000, 4 or 5,000. And we're getting the gospel out to them, you know, through social media. Well, I know we're wrapping things up here,
Yeah.
Trey.
I guess
real
I talked a
quickly,
lot.
that's okay. Do you want to just mention what you're involved in now, as well as any upcoming events that you have through the FCS or Marlin Heights?
Yeah, so we have so at FCS we're still having FCS at Tuesdays at 6:30. It'll be room 1502 or 1504, one of those. Sometimes they meet in the student lounge. That's every Tuesday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Everybody is welcome, but our advertised age group is anywhere from 18 to 30.
Okay.
So there's that. Now, as far as Marlin Heights Community Church, we do have a concert coming up, and it's actually a benefits concert for the OVYN. It's a pre-Mother's Day. It's a pre-Mother's Day concert. So that Saturday before Mother's Day, there's going to be a concert, and there's going to be concessions and all that jazz. I believe it's happening. We don't have a specific time yet, but we'll have that coming up. We'll get that out to you guys. But that's something that's coming up that we encourage everybody to come out to.
Great. And also we have the Lee Strobel simulcast coming in.
Yeah, that's
a week from Wednesday here at Marlin Heights Community Church. So encourage folks to come out and take part in that. We'll promote that on social media as well. But just wanted to say thank you, Trey. You've done a tremendous job.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Oh, no problem. Taking up the mantle for Christ with the younger generation. Really appreciate all you're doing for the Lord.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and look forward to hearing from you at any point. If you'd like to touch base with me or have any questions, just call or text me at 608-556-3068, or you can email me at bobbyjonbauman@gmail.com, BOBBYJONBAUMAN @gmail.com. Thank you so much.